Welcome to the African Weekly Roundup, a weekly program every Sunday here on HORUFADHI Media, where I discuss the latest news and events across the African continent. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program, and where you can find other exclusive programs such as Behind the Scenes and Mahahi Saleh, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into the headlines. And we kick off in southern Africa, where Malawi launches an international appeal to help with the aftermath of Cyclone Freddy. 14 days of mourning have been declared as the death toll from the Cyclone Freddy rose to 326, the country's president said on Thursday, bringing the total number of victims across southern Africa to more than 400 since February. Rescuers were unearthing more bodies as the chances of finding survivors faded after the cyclone followed a highly unusual course by returning to lash southern Africa's mainland a second time. As of yesterday, the death toll from this disaster had risen from 225 to 326, Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera said in the devastated southern region near the commercial hub of Ballantrae. The number of people displaced has more than doubled to 183,159, as has the number of households displaced, which now stands at 40,702, he added. Chakwera renewed his appeal for global aid as rescuers continue to seek survivors on Thursday from the flooding and mudslides caused by torrential rains this week. More than 300 emergency shelters have been set up for survivors, while the army and police have been deployed to deal with the crisis. 2 weeks of national mourning and a state of emergency have been declared. Now, the cyclone has destroyed property, homes, crops, infrastructure, including bridges that have cut off communities that desperately need help. The cyclone first struck southern Africa in late February, striking Madagascar and Mozambique, but causing only limited damage in the landlocked Malawi country. The storm then moved out over the Indian Ocean, where it drew more power from the warm waters before making a rare course reversal to slam into mainland a second time. The rains have eased since Wednesday, but Freddy is still on track to becoming one of the world's longest tropical storms. In Mozambique, the storm has caused at least 73 deaths and displaced tens of thousands of people over the past weeks and killed a further 17 people in Madagascar. Now, Mozambique's president has also appealed for emergency aid to rebuild destroyed infrastructure after visiting the stricken province of Zambezia, which borders Malawi. Now, lacking sniffer dogs and armed just with shovels, rescuers in Malawi made a grim hunt for buried and decomposing bodies lying amid the debris from destroyed homes. In Manje, a township around 15 kilometers south of Ballantyre, 5 bodies were recovered after locals said they had spotted bubbles forming under the muddy rubble. Meteorologists say the cyclone is exceptional in its duration and has characteristics consistent with warnings about climate change. Now, moving over to Libya, where the UN nuclear watchdog inspectors have found that roughly 2.5 tons of natural uranium have gone missing from a Libyan site that is not under government control, the watchdog told member states in a statement on Wednesday, seen by news agency Reuters. And the finding is the result of an inspection originally planned for last year that had to be postponed because of the security situation in the region and was finally carried out on Tuesday, according to the confidential statement by the International Atomic Energy Agency chief Rafael Grossi. Now, the IAEA inspectors found that 10 drums containing approximately 2.5 tons of natural uranium in the form of UOC, or uranium ore concentrate, previously declared by Libya as being stored at that location, were not present at the location. Now, the agency would carry out further activities to determine the circumstances of the uranium's removal from the site, which it did not name, and where it is now, the statement added. The loss of knowledge about the present location of nuclear material may present a radiological risk as well as nuclear security concerns, it said, adding that reaching the site required complex logistics. Now, in 2003, Libya, under then-leader Muammar al-Gaddafi, renounced its nuclear weapons program, which had obtained centrifuges that can enrich uranium, as well as design information for a nuclear bomb, though it made little progress towards a bomb. Libya has had little peace since 2011's NATO-backed uprising that ousted former President Muammar al-Gaddafi. Since 2014, political control has been split between rival eastern and western factions, with the last major bout of conflict ending in 2020. Now, Libya's interim government, put in place in early 2021 through a UN-backed peace plan, was only supposed to last until an election scheduled for December of that year that has not been held, and its legitimacy is now also disputed. Now, on Thursday of this week, Eastern Libyan forces said that 10 drums of uranium declared missing by the UN nuclear watchdog had been found near the warehouse they were taken from in southern Libya. Khalid Mahjoub, head of the media unit for the Libyan National Army, the main eastern military force, said in a statement that 10 missing barrels had been recovered, though a separate video he had sent showed workers counting 18. Now, Mahjoub said the site was a warehouse towards the border with Chad that the IAEA visited in 2020 and sealed with red wax. Now, the barrels were found about 5 kilometers from the warehouse, he added. He speculated that a group from Chad had raided the warehouse and taken the barrels, hoping they may contain weapons and ammunition, but had abandoned them. Now, the LNA, the Libyan National Army, commanded by Khalifa Haftar, was at war with Western forces from 2014 to 2020 and launched an assault on Tripoli in 2019 to try and take control of the government there. Since that bout of conflict ended with the ceasefire, the political process aimed at reuniting Libya has stalled, and eastern factions reject the legitimacy of the internationally recognized administration in Tripoli. Now, the LNA was backed in a conflict with a Russian Wagner group, which the UN panel of experts said in 2020 had deployed up to 1,200 fighters in Libya. Now, the LNA at times also fought alongside fighters from Chad. Now, moving on to neighboring Tunisia, where Italy has begun lobbying the International Monetary Fund to unblock a $1.9 billion loan to Tunisia, fearful that without cash, the country could be destabilized, unleashing a new wave of migrants towards Europe, the Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said. Now, Tunisia's bailout talks with the IMF have been stalled for months, with the United States, among others, demanding far-reaching reforms from the President, Kais Saied, to free up the cash. Now, efforts to secure the bailout have been hampered by Tunisia's political upheaval since July 2021, when President Saied seized most powers, shutting down parliament and moving to rule by decree. Now, Saied has never publicly backed the IMF deal, leaving donors worried he may reverse eventual reforms after the money arrives or blame them for any resulting economic pain. However, Tajani has spoken to the IMF managing director and urged her to show flexibility to stave off possible financial collapse. And the minister has spoken about the problem with the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and has raised the issue with counterparts in Slovenia and Croatia on Friday ahead of forthcoming meetings of EU foreign ministers. Now, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is also working on the phones, one official said, warning that Italy faced an invasion of migrants in the coming months if Tunisia did not get the money, according to this official. Now, Italy has taken in 20,046 boat migrants so far in 2023, a record number, putting the country on course to beat the all-time high for arrivals since 2016, when 181,436 people reached land in a flotilla or a flimsy boat. Now, according to an unofficial United Nations data, 12,000 of those who have reached Italy this year set sail from Tunisia against 1,300 in the same period in 2022, an inversion of the previous pattern whereby Libya was the main launching pad for migrants. Now, staying in Tunisia, Tunisia's president names one of his staunchest supporters as interior minister. Now, Tunisia's president Kais Saied named Kamal Feki, the former governor of Tunis and a staunch supporter of the president, as his new interior minister on Friday, just hours after Tawfiq Charfadine resigned from the post amid a crackdown of prominent opposition figures that has prompted international air. Now, Feki, one of Saied's staunchest supporters, refused to grant a protest permit to the opposition Salvation Front coalition, saying that its leaders were involved in plotting against state security, but the interior minister allowed them to protest. He criticized the opposition several times, describing them as immoral and weightless. Sharfuddin said he earlier resigned due to family reasons. Now, Sharfuddin at one stage was seen as the closest Tunisian official to the president, but had in recent months appeared less frequently in public. Now, speaking to reporters in a comments broadcasted on local media, Sharfuddin referred to the death of his wife last year and said he needed to look after his children. Now moving over to Ethiopia, where TPLF in Tigray region has announced its nominee for president of a regional administration called for in a peace deal that ended a 2-year war in the northern area, according to party-run media. Now Tigray's People Liberation Front TPLF named its spokesman Reid for the interim post, Tigray TV reported on Saturday. Now, TPLF fought Ethiopian forces and their allies in a war that killed tens of thousands of people. A truce was reached last November after federal forces recorded a series of battlefield victories. Now, if Getshue's Reid nomination is approved by the federal government, he would replace TPLF's former leader, Gebre Michael, who has led Tigray since 2018. It's not clear when the federal government will weigh in on the nomination or when the interim administration will be set up. Now, Ethiopian government spokesman did not immediately respond to requests for comment from the media. The lack of interim government in Tigray has been hampering the humanitarian response across the region, where millions are in dire need of assistance, according to aid workers in the region. Now, salaries for civil servants and medical professionals have not been paid, and aid agencies lack a clear interlocutor, they said. Now, the nomination came days after the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visited Ethiopia and praised authorities there for progress on implementing the peace pact, while cautioning that more work needed to be done. During that visit, Blinken discussed with the Tigray leadership and the Ethiopian leadership on the importance, the Ethiopian federal leadership that is, on the importance of setting up the interim administration. And finally, over to East Africa, where British Home Secretary or Interior Minister Suella Braverman arrived in Rwanda to discuss an agreement in which the UK would relocate undocumented refugees and migrants there, as she doubles down on a plan that has faced significant legal challenges. Last year, the UK agreed to send tens of thousands of people more than 4,000 miles away to Rwanda as part of a £120 million deal. Now, no flights have taken off yet because opponents are challenging the policy in the courts. The deal with Rwanda is a major part of the UK's plan to detain and deport asylum seekers arriving in small boats across the English Channel. Now, Braverman met Rwanda's Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta on Saturday and told reporters in Kigali that she had agreed extra support for the people whom the UK sends to the country. Now, Braverman is expected to meet Rwanda President Paul Kagame on Sunday. Now, the partnership was announced in April, but the first deportation flight was blocked by an injunction from the European Court of Human Rights. In December, London's High Court ruled the policy lawful, but its judges also said the government failed to consider the individual circumstances of the people it tried to deport, signaling further legal battles ahead. Opponents are seeking to appeal that verdict in April, which is next month, and it could go to the UK Supreme Court later in this year, 2023. And that is the top stories on the African continent this week. Please tune in next week for further updates from across the continent.